You're listening to Scaling Up Services, where we speak with entrepreneurs, authors, business experts, and thought leaders to give you the knowledge and insights you need to scale your service-based business faster and easier. And now, here is your host, business coach Bruce Eckfeldt.
Are you a CEO looking to scale your company faster and easier? Check out Thrive Roundtable. Thrive combines a moderated peer group mastermind, expert one-on-one coaching, access to proven growth tools, and a 24/7 support community. Created by Inc. award-winning CEO and certified scaling up business coach Bruce Eckfeldt, Thrive will help you grow your business more quickly and with less drama. For details on the program, visit eckfeldt.com/thrive. That's ECKFELDT.com/thrive.
Welcome, everyone. This is Scaling Up Services. I'm Bruce Eckfeldt. I'm your host. And our guest today is Marc Sellouk, and he is president and CEO of Flewber, which is an air taxi service. We're going to find out more about his background as an entrepreneur and about the business and where they are in terms of creating new flight services for people, not just elite passengers, but everyone else. All of us people who are not doing private jets right now. With that, Marc, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Bruce. Glad to be here.
So, fascinating business. I'm curious and I'm fascinated to kind of figure out how the operations and stuff work and hear about how you've set up this new business model. But why don't we start with a little bit more about you and your background and your entrepreneurial journey and how you kind of got to Flewber. What was the backstory? Tell us more.
Well, so my career started about 20 years ago in technology, and I decided in 1996, when Congress deregulated the whole telecom market, the Telecom Act of 96, they introduced what they call competitive local exchange carriers to open up competition against the back then New York Telephone Bell Atlantic. Mm-hmm. So I was one of the first to jump on that bandwagon and became what is really a public utility in several states across the country. Mm-hmm. And as a result, we became what they call today a managed service provider that provides voice and data solutions to businesses. And we went ahead and built out the network. And over 20 years, we've built some real strong sophistication into that network and became one of the predominant providers of voice and data services to small and medium-sized and in many cases large businesses. And so over my career, I've built a very interesting operation that had many different facets to it from a logistical perspective. Uh-huh. And, we had a great team, which is a very important factor in building any business. Yeah. And that's brought me to fast forward 20 years, being able to exit and sell off the company I built to a $2 billion publicly held company. Yeah. And, good for you. Yep. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Very exciting, very educational.
Yeah, I'm sure. There's probably a whole nother episode we could do on that exit.
Oh yeah. And through the ups and downs, you learn a lot in business. Yeah. You learn a lot on the personal side and on the people side and on the business side. And so, I've always had a passion for aviation. And, as a pilot, my passion was really for the hobby itself. But then I knew when I exited, I wanted to do something that relates to my passion, something that would excite me waking up in the morning. We all want to wake up and go to work and do something that we love. Yeah. And so to me, the challenge was how do I use my visionary skills to build a business that's sexy, that makes sense, and that has a need in the marketplace. And so, I actually, I spent time meeting with the FCC and flying oftentimes regional flights, New York, Boston, New York, DC, by way of example. Mm-hmm. And I found that there was really no alternative to commercial aviation. And for an 11 o'clock meeting, 11 o'clock morning meeting, I used to have to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, get to the airport for an 8 o'clock flight, 2 hours in advance, and go through all the absurdity and the nonsense that we're all very used to and quite frankly frustrated with. Yeah. And there was really no alternative outside of flying the cost-prohibitive, quote-unquote, private jet type arrangement. And so I built a parallel to a ride-sharing service like the Ubers and Lyfts of the world. And you see when, back 10 years ago when you used to walk the streets of Manhattan, you used to see these black cars lined up to pick up, executives and C-level type personnel. And it was really catering to the upper echelon of the marketplace.
Yeah.
So you have these ride-sharing companies that came in and said, hey, we're going to make it stylish. We're going to build an app to make it really easy, and we're going to make it affordable for everyone. Why does it have to be just for the C-level guys or for wealthy people? Why can't it be for everyone? And I build a parallel to this industry because, as I said, there's no alternative to the commercial, to flying commercial today.
Yeah.
Outside of some of these other companies that pick you up in Bentley and Rolls Royces and bring you these fancy aircrafts. And so I said to myself, there's got to be a similar model here, like the ride-sharing apps, that we can really make it for everyone. And so after my exit, I did a lot of research, and I found that there was a way to really build something different. And really, as I said, I built a parallel to it because I used the same model. Build an app, make it economical and stylish and without the frustration. And so Flewber was born. And basically what it is our objective is to, through an app, have a consumer download it, book a flight within under a minute, and on demand. So a day before, 2 hours before, or a month before, and be able to have a car pick you up from your origination, bring you to the field, and 15 minutes before the flight, board in, get a newspaper, a latte, some M&Ms, get on an aircraft, and be at your destination within 45 minutes.
And are these are solo, like I'm the only passenger, or you can pick up multiple passengers, or how do you deal with the capacity?
Right. So they're scheduled flights. So we have, as a broker, so Flewber is our broker, and then we have an exclusive air operator.
Okay.
That I'll talk a little more about. Logistically putting this whole business together was challenging, only because you can't just, buy an aircraft and, hire a pilot and just say, hey, fly these folks out to where they need to be. There are actually licenses associated with it. And to get into the business, you can't just apply for a license. It takes many years, and there are skill sets that are required. So the next best thing for me was to buy a company. And that's exactly what I did. I bought a company that was already in existence, that had the aircrafts. And I kind of married the broker and the operator together and said, hey, we can make this work and create an alternative to airlines and make it less frustrating. And that's what we're going to be doing. And so our price point, there are no annual fees. Our price points are going to be $600 around. So it's $700, but you get an instant $100 rebate if you book your terrestrial travel to the airport with us through our app.
Got it.
And so it's $600 round trip in all of our scheduled markets. We'll be launching with New York, Boston, New York, Atlantic City, and immediately deploying to Philly and DC within this region. And our 2-year plan basically is to take that model and replicate it. We want to build like a cookie cutter model and replicate it in different parts of the country. Specifically, Florida, Texas, California, Washington State, and Illinois is where we plan on expanding to. Yeah.
Where were you a couple of years ago? Because I had an office in Boston, and I was there every other week, flying either on the train or on trying to fly commercial aircraft. So unfortunately, you're about 6 years too late for me. But yeah, I totally get it.
I'll tell you where I was. I was at the airport taking off the screws of my belt and dropping my pants.
I was in the line next to you. Yeah.
No, but it's a neat idea that the business model works out very well. I'm funding the company, and for me, I had to, as an investor and as the operator, I had to prove to myself that it actually was viable. And so not only, that I have to build a model, but I also had to make sure that it made sense. Yeah. And so, look, it's a breath of fresh air in this industry. It's a sexy model. A lot of people are looking for this alternative, but they're looking for it in a reasonable way where they don't have to spend thousands and thousands of dollars to, get on a private aircraft and get to where you need to be. And we make that comfortable. We give that business class type scenario to really everyone. And so there are 15,000 people a day from the tri-state area that travel to regional cities like Boston and DC. And, why can't it be for them? And that's exactly where we want to go with this. We want to make it for everyone.
Yeah, no, and that market has been so polarized. I mean, either you're you're going off to Marine Terminal at LGA to, catch the shuttle, the Delta shuttle or something, or your, thousands of dollars for a private jet. I mean, even some of these other private jet service, net jets and things like that, they're not cheap, right? So yeah, it seems like there's been this big gap in the middle of the market, that you're trying to hit. So I'm curious, sort of a couple questions. One, how much do you feel like your experience in dealing with the FCC on the sort of telephone side and the broadcast side, how much experience or knowledge or familiarity from that were you able to transfer in terms of dealing with the FAA, another three-letter acronym, government agency, in terms of dealing with like regulation and navigating those things? I mean, did the experience you had before set you up to be able to handle that better or navigate that, better or faster?
From an organizational perspective, it did, but the FAA is a completely different animal from the FCC.
Yeah.
A wise man once told me that, and he showed me actually some of the rules and guidelines that are written in some of the regulations under the FAA, and he asked me what color the ink was. And I'm looking at that piece of paper, and I said, it's black. And he says, well, look closer. What color is the ink? And I said, well, it's black. He goes, no, it's red. Everything written in these regulations is written in blood. And so, I don't mean to be, I don't mean to dramatize it here, but they mean business. And everything that they do is serious.
Yeah.
And, we take it very seriously. And so part of the challenge is, even though I come from a strong business background and I've had a little bit of success, they don't just, the FAA just doesn't allow someone to come in and say, hey, you've got a good business background, we're going to allow you to operate a charter.
Yeah.
The company that I acquired actually had the skill set within the organization. And so that basically transferred over in the acquisition, and those folks remain.
Yeah.
So all of these skill sets that are required, whether, it's a director of operations who's responsible for all of the rule sets under the FAA guidelines, or director of maintenance, who's responsible for the mechanical, and then you have your chief pilot who's responsible for the all flight operations, charter managers who are responsible for logistical flights as they happen, day in, day out. So all these folks and all these skill sets we basically inherited from the acquisition. Part of building a venture or a partnership between the broker and the operator, which is essentially owned by the same company at this point, it still remains two independent companies. So from a business perspective, having it work operationally and building a system and a platform so that you don't swivel chair between systems, that's where the skill set and the other side of the business house plays a factor. Yeah. And so, having, for example, it's one thing to build an app with a consumer-facing product. It's another thing to have the back end of the app be able to scale enough to support all the logistical things that happen from an operational perspective. And that's where my CIO comes in, my former operations people that have followed me into this venture. That's where that helps. Yeah. And so, we kind of seen this movie before, coming from a regulated utility. We're going from one, as you said, we're going from one acronym body to another, but the skill set and the organizational, know-how is essentially the same. And so we've got to be very organized, very meticulous, very methodical. And, it's keeping it together and pulling the trigger to make sure that you scale properly and you operate properly. Yeah.
I'm curious, just because you had a successful exit, now you're looking at a new business or, working on a new venture. What other learnings or insights or things have you consciously decided to do differently or do the same in terms of these two businesses? I guess how transferable has your knowledge experience been between the two efforts?
Well, I realize that in the aviation industry, people are very temperamental, obviously, because of the type of pressure that everyone's under to follow these regulations. And so having dealt with people in the past and understanding emotions and feelings and pressure, I think that played a big factor. I could tell you definitively that it played a big factor in getting this whole organization together and this whole sort of, how does one department communicate with another department without stepping on their toes? So the experience from that perspective has helped out a lot. And believe me when I tell you, there are a lot of moving pieces here, and to keep it together is very, very challenging.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for our audience, you are actually in your hangar right now. You're in the office, but you're in the hangar on site. I mean, I guess how much did you expect that this new venture would be really hands-on and actually with the aircraft in, working from a hangar. I mean, I guess what was your vision when you originally kind of ventured on this, and how has that been the same or different from how things are playing out for you?
Well, for me, it's a dream. I mean, I love aircrafts. I love flying. And so having an office in the hangar actually worked out for me. I get my view, some people like water views, some people like city views. I love aircraft views.
Yeah.
So for me, it worked out very well. And, initially it wasn't intentional, but the office was available, and I decided, hey, why not? And so we've, our aircrafts are actually going to be parked right outside our office, which is also an added benefit.
Yeah. So you are funding this yourself. How does that factor into things, or how does that change the dynamics? And I guess, was that a conscious decision for you in terms of doing this yourself versus raising money? Tell us a little bit more about that, because I think that's an interesting dynamic for a company when it's funded by, a key entrepreneur.
Right. So, through my experience, I learned that proving out the model first and retaining as much equity as possible ultimately works out much better in the long run. And because I had the capability to do it, I thought it made sense to first build, have the building blocks in place, sort of build the foundation and then capture revenue. And then ultimately, there's no question that we're going to have to raise revenue, but that, once the platform is there and the foundation is built, there's a lot more value to it. And because I was basically at the right place at the right time and enjoy rolling up my sleeves, because that's the type of guy that I am. I like, if I move into an office, I'm going to put the desks together myself, and I'll also have meetings with the bankers that I need to get the, whatever we need to get rolling, we'll get rolling. So that includes rolling up my sleeves.
Yeah, no, and I think that's an interesting situation. I've talked to a few different entrepreneurs who, have had good exits. They've got, significant capital that can deploy into a new venture, and kind of that decision to self-finance for a kind of a longer period of time than maybe other companies would be able to is interesting. I mean, because it keeps you very focused on the business. I think a lot of folks get so wrapped up in and consumed with raising capital early in a business that is tough, that a lot of founders struggle with that.
And that's what happens. Once you raise capital, you have a fiduciary responsibility to the investors.
Yeah.
And so oftentimes that could take away from your focus on a day-to-day business. And where my focus needs to be right now is executing on this plan. We have a business plan. Yeah. We have a model, and we have to execute. And every step of the way, that execution, especially in this sector, which is, every step you take is critical, it's got to be precision at its best. And so that's where I am right now. And, for me to go out and raise money is not too complicated. I have the ability to do that. I have from my previous career. I have a pretty good following. So, my focus needs to be right now in executing this plan right, as opposed to having quarterly meeting with investors and sort of getting some, guidelines from them as to how to operate and how to pivot. Yeah. So again, if you have the ability to do that, it's preferable. But oftentimes you'll find that, especially in a cash-intensive business like this business, sometimes it can be. But at some point, we will be there, and we'll go out and raise money, but it's got to be at the right place at the right time.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like, certainly if you can push the raise until later in the proving of the model, it just means that your valuation is going to be much better. You're going to have to give up less equity as part of that raise. And where do you think, like, when does that really happen for you? Is this at a scaling point? Like, once you prove the business model and you're focused on scaling the business, like going to new geographies, expanding your number of aircraft you have? And what's the trigger for you in terms of the next stage of capitalization?
So we need to prove that we can operate. We need to prove that we can get revenue, and we need to prove that we're profitable. And then we need to prove that we can expand and replicate that model. Yeah. I think once we achieve those 4 parameters, we'll be in a very strong position to command a better valuation. Yeah. And so, once you've done something and you have a track record behind you, from the actual operation itself, not just from your previous careers or previous, adventures. Once we achieve as a company those 4 parameters, I think that's what we'll be. And I think we'll be there within a year.
Yeah. Wow. Good. And tell us about how kind of things have developed, like anything interesting that you've learned as you've kind of built the initial model and you've kind of gone to put pieces in place. You did the acquisition. What are some of your takeaways or learnings in terms of going through this process, having been through it before as an entrepreneur, but now in this model? What are some of the insights you've developed?
If you think it's going to take a certain amount of time, It's just like building a house.
Double it.
Don't let that fool you. Budget double the time.
Yeah.
So look, it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort. It's a government agency. The FAA is a government agency, and it's bureaucratic like anything else. And there are processes, and they take a lot of time, and rightfully so. And I actually enjoy the challenge, and I appreciate the fact that it takes this much time because when people board an aircraft, they know that they're going to feel safe and they feel comfortable.
Yeah.
So it's, my takeaways are from what I've experienced so far is, you have to be very organized. You have to prepare to execute, and you really have to be prepared for delays. Yeah. And while I did prepare for delays, we did have, obviously, we were supposed to launch a bit earlier, but, we're not under the gun here. So we're not in a rush to do anything, and, we want to do it right.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting dealing with a business that has, this, life safety component to it. The whole kind of risk calculation becomes quite different. It's not like building a app and delivering food and, something goes wrong, someone doesn't get their pizza in time. It's a very different kind of risk model and a risk context that you're dealing with. I guess, how do you deal with that? Or I guess, how does that affect things, going from kind of telephony and information services or connectivity services, where, yes, that it's a big deal and business operations can be dramatically affected by loss of connectivity and stuff versus, aircraft and life safety issues. I guess, tell me a little bit about the difference, how you've kind of adjusted to this new world.
Right. So as I said, there are two entities here. One is the entity, which is the operator that I acquired, and the other is the broker, which is Flewber. And even though they are owned by the same company, there are two independent companies. So the operator is actually, has a workforce specifically for operating the flights themselves. So the skill set, so the FAA actually regulates that company as opposed to the broker. So the skill set that was there, the pilots that were there, the operators that were there, the charter managers that were there, they remain within. They've been operating for 10 plus years. In fact, collectively they have over 70 years of experience. Yeah. In the chartering business. And
so you separated, so you're organizationally have separated them. I guess, like, have you physically separated them, culturally separated them? Like, how do you make sure that you don't infect one organization with the other? Like, keep one organization, kind of driving and iterative and let's develop new applications and drive the technology versus the other one is look, we're running, a flight services, an aircraft company that needs a certain culture even that's different from that.
Yeah, I mean, they are two separate companies. They operate independently. And even though they're in the same office, the culture is the culture. That's top down. And, being organized and having things done the right way, that's again, top down. Yeah. But I mean, they're physically separate companies and have separate responsibilities. For example, Flewber is running the development of the app and coming up with the schedules and coming up with all the marketing and the management of the actual, launch of the service itself. The charter operator specifically manages the mechanical, safety, and chartering of the flights and operating the actual flights. So that the folks that are within that organization actually conform to all these different safety and security requirements that are mandated. There are manuals that are what we call operational specs. There are manuals that are specific to the operator itself that are very tedious in terms of what they've been through to get those manuals together.
No, I'm sure.
And so, it's very similar to an airline just because it's an air taxi company. So there are three types of licenses in this business. There's a 121, which is your typical airline, your 91, which is your NetJets type company where you have a fractional ownership in the plane. And then there's a 135, which is an on-demand air taxi. Okay. And the 135 and the 121 are the most rigid in terms of regulations and safety and mechanical requirements. So we fall under that spec. And so when you get on JetBlue flight, it's pretty much the same requirements from getting on a chartered flight or a 135 flight.
Yeah. So let's geek out on the aircraft a little bit. So tell us about the aircraft, why you've chosen the planes that you have. Tell us a little bit about that process.
So the actual aircrafts that we inherited from the acquisition we've kept. They're really nice aircrafts. They're the Cadillacs of the aviation industry. And they seat 6 on the passenger side with 2 crews. All of our aircrafts are flown by a pilot, a captain, and first officer. Mm-hmm. And then we have our jets, which are 8+2. So we have a combination of props and jets.
Okay.
Our jets are a little bigger. They fly 8 passengers plus 2 crew. Both are same configuration inside, same type of comfort. Our jets are a little faster than a prop, obviously. Mm-hmm. All of our missions are an hour and under. Okay. And they all have a business class type environment. So, club seating, mm-hmm. tables, and just a nice level of comfort.
Yeah. Walk us through the experience of if I purchase a flight, how does the experience work for a customer?
So it's really simple. It's almost, I wanted to make it almost like a ride-sharing app. Mm-hmm. So you download the app, you sign up, it takes under a minute, and a couple icons come up, you book a flight, choose your origination city, your destination city, the scheduled flights pop up, select your flights, determine whether you want to take the rebate for booking your ground travel through the app. Mm-hmm. Once you do that and you do select it, you get an instant rebate. You check out, enter your credit card, and boom, you're booked.
And then so walk me through the experience of actually taking the flight.
Right. So once you get your booking, depending on the timing, you get an alert, a notification on your app, on your phone. Mm-hmm. That tells you that the time has come for you to book your ground transportation. Mm-hmm. All through our app, seamless. You go ahead into the ride-sharing portion of the process, mm-hmm. and you book your car picks you up an hour before the flight, gets you to the field or to the airport 15 minutes prior to departure. Once you arrive at the field, you go through a small security protocol that we have in place here. You have a newspaper, a latte, a couple snacks, board the plane, and within 45 minutes you're at your destination. Disembark and get your ride out to wherever your meeting is, or mm-hmm. Wherever your ultimate destination is. And then on the way back, you have a car again through our app that brings you back to the field, hop on a plane, and you're back home.
Got it. And 15 minutes before, really?
Oh, yeah.
Sounds too good to be true.
It's unbelievable. It's that's the whole premise of our plan here. And yeah. I think it's going to allow for people to have a different perspective in how to travel for aviation and how to travel in general with airlines and airplanes. Yeah. And so I think it's a breath of fresh air. I think it's something different, and I think it's something that the rest of us folks are going to want to hop on the bandwagon with.
Yeah. So you mentioned the security element.
And by the way, we have a couple of different things on the horizon. I just want to mention. Sure. I want to mention in here, since we have, I'm assuming we have a great audience here. Yeah. But we have different unique products that are coming out. We have what's called a Flewworks product. I'm sure you're familiar with a company called WeWorks. Yeah. So our Flewworks product is basically going to be able to take advantage of conference rooms we have at the flight businesses offices at the airport, where our departures and our where our actual departures happen. So you'll be able to take advantage of spaces we have there. And then we also have our Flewber Lux product, which is going to be more of like a premium type ride. Okay. And those will be longer distances and more luxurious type services. So, these are things that are on the horizon as we expand, and we're excited about them.
Yeah. So, and you mentioned security in this. Like, how do you deal with the security issues? Because obviously, airline, the whole air travel thing has been, so impacted by security concerns. How do you address it in this model?
I can't tell you.
It's all secret.
Well, that's the point, right?
Yes, exactly. But it's there. You take care of security.
We take security very seriously. Once a passenger gets to the airport, we're big on certain things that, for example, we profile. Uh-huh. Definitely, we do things similar to El Al's approach to security. Okay. And so we have our own security protocols in place here that are rigorous and that are different.
Yeah. Good. I think we need a new approach to security, airline, air traffic security. It's such a.
You mean you don't feel comfortable with the guy asking you to take off your shoes either?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'll see. That's a whole industry that's ripe for disruption. So hopefully you're the beginning of this. So tell us a little bit about your day to day. I mean, you're an exited entrepreneur, so you're in the throes of a new venture. How do you kind of keep things balanced? How do you keep things fun? How do you manage yourself as you're kind of going back into the thick of starting a new company?
I am doing what I love. I can't wait to wake up in the morning and get out of bed and go to work.
Yeah.
I have a hard time leaving the office because I love what I do so much.
Yeah.
But family is also very important. And so, I make a lot of time for my kids, for my family, which I think is important. And then that's a message that I've always kept in all my organizations, that family is always first.
Yeah.
But, I love what I do. I love waking up in the morning and heading out to the airport in the wee hours in the morning. It's a great place for me to be because I love it so much. But, the work that revolves around it drives me to perfection.
Yeah.
And so, I think that's what everyone's goal should be to strive for. So
yeah, no, I think it's always, I think being highly engaged and, in everything that you do, both business and family, I think is ultimately the goal on this stuff. And that keeps people balanced, keep people's energy levels high, keeps their productivity high. So good for you. Marc, if people want to find out more about Flewber and the other services and the work that you're doing, what's the best way to get that information?
Well, you can follow us on social media at Flewber on Facebook, at Flewber on Instagram, and at FlyFlewber on Twitter, and at Flewber on LinkedIn. And our website is www.flewber.com. And within the next couple of weeks, folks will be able to download our app. And we look forward to a successful trip on this.
Awesome. I'll make sure that all of those links and handles are in the show notes here so people can click through. I am looking forward to it. I'm in Boston, DC on a fairly regular basis. So as soon as you're released, let me know and I will take a flight and I'll report on it. So,
we'll do that, Bruce. Thank you so much for having me.
This has been great. Thank you for the time.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Scaling Up Services with business coach Bruce Eckfeldt. To find a full list of podcast episodes, download the tools and worksheets, and access other great content, visit the website at scalingupservices.com. And don't forget to sign up for the free newsletter at scalingupservices.com/newsletter.